The mysterious encounter. The evening sky was painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. Alex sat alone on an old wooden bench in the neighborhood park. The soft rustling of leaves and distant chirping of birds were the only sounds around him. He fiddled with a small packet of candies in his hand, the kind he used to love as a child. Today, they were nothing more than a distraction from the emptiness he felt. It had been a tough day. Alex, a lanky 16-year-old with a mop of messy brown hair, had just moved to this small town. Making friends wasn't his strong suit, and the unfamiliar faces at school only made him feel more isolated. He sighed and unwrapped a candy, popping it into his mouth. As he sat there, lost in thought, a strange sensation crept over him, like he was being watched. He turned his head, scanning the park. It was nearly deserted, except for a figure standing a few feet away. The person was tall, with long, silvery hair that shimmered faintly under the fading light. They wore a simple, flowing dress that seemed slightly out of place in the modern world. Alex blinked. He wasn't sure if it was the strange outfit or the way the figure stood so still, almost unnaturally so, that made him uneasy. Gathering his courage, he called out, "Hey, are you okay?" The figure turned, and Alex's breath caught in his throat. Her face was strikingly beautiful, but not in a way he had ever seen before. Her eyes were larger than normal, glowing faintly with a soft, golden hue. Her skin was pale and flawless, with a faint iridescent sheen that seemed almost otherworldly. I am fine," she replied in a voice that was soft, but carried a melodic quality. It was as if her words were wrapped in music. She stepped closer, her movements fluid, almost gliding. Alex swallowed hard. "You're not from around here, are you?" She tilted her head, her expression curious. "No, I am not. But I was drawn here." "Drawn here?" Alex repeated, unsure what she meant. He glanced at the candies in his hand, then back at her. "Want one?" She hesitated, her golden eyes studying him as if he had just made a profound gesture. Slowly, she reached out and took one of the candies, her slender fingers brushing against his palm. Alex felt a strange warmth at the touch, like a tiny electric spark. She unwrapped the candy with deliberate care, inspecting it as if it were a rare artifact. Then she placed it in her mouth. Her eyes widened, and a small smile appeared on her lips. "This is sweet," she said, as if the concept were new to her. Alex chuckled nervously. "Yeah, it's candy. Haven't you had one before?" "No," she said simply, her gaze locking onto his. There was something unsettling yet fascinating about her stare. "You are kind to share." "It's just candy," Alex said, trying to downplay the moment. "No big deal." She stepped back, her expression shifting to something he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, perhaps, or was it something deeper? "Kindness is rare among your kind." Alex frowned. "What do you mean, my kind? You say that like you're not human." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked up at the sky, her golden eyes reflecting the first stars of the evening. "I must leave now," she said abruptly. "Wait," Alex called after her. "Who are you?" She turned to face him one last time. "Someone you may meet again." Before Alex could ask more, she took a step back, and in a blink, she was gone. Not gone as in she walked away. She simply disappeared, as if she had dissolved into the air. Alex sat there, frozen in disbelief. What just happened? He whispered to himself. He looked down at the candy packet in his hand. Only one wrapper was missing, the one she had taken. The spot where she had stood was completely empty, no sign of footprints or anything to suggest she had been there at all. For the rest of the evening, Alex couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. Who was she? And how did she vanish like that? His logical side told him it was a trick, maybe some kind of elaborate prank. But a deeper part of him felt something more profound had happened. As the night grew darker, Alex walked home, the weight of the mysterious encounter heavy on his mind. He didn't know it yet, but this brief meeting would change his life forever. The words she had spoken, "Someone you may meet again," echoed in his thoughts. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. The alien beauty he had shared candy with was about to turn his quiet life upside down. The alien's return. The sound of rain tapping against the window pulled Alex out of his restless thoughts. It had been years since that strange evening in the park, but the memory of the mysterious girl with golden eyes still lingered. Life had moved on. College, a part-time job, and the daily grind. But every now and then, Alex found himself staring at the stars, wondering if it had all been real. Tonight was one of those nights. The rain painted streaks on the glass as Alex sat by his desk, flipping through old sketches. Among them was a crude drawing he had made as a teenager, an attempt to capture her face. The paper was yellowed with time, but her glowing eyes and serene smile were etched into the lines. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You're losing it, Alex," he muttered to himself. "She was just a weird girl, or maybe you imagined the whole thing." Just as he reached to put the drawing away, his tablet buzzed to life on the desk. Alex frowned. He didn't recall setting any alarms. The screen flickered for a moment before a message appeared in bold, unfamiliar text. "Do you remember me, human?" Alex's heart stopped. His first thought was that it had to be a prank, but the words on the screen were too specific, too familiar. His hands trembled as he tapped the reply button. "Who is this?" he typed. The screen went black for a second, and then another message appeared. "Look outside." His stomach churned with a mix of dread and curiosity. Slowly, he stood and moved toward the window. The rain had eased into a light drizzle, and the streetlights cast a pale glow on the empty road. At first, he saw nothing unusual. But then, beneath the flickering light of the lamppost across the street, he noticed a figure standing perfectly still. It was her. Alex's breath caught in his throat. She hadn't aged a day. The same flowing silver hair, the same iridescent sheen to her skin, and those unmistakable golden eyes glowing softly in the dark. She didn't move, just stood there, watching him, against every instinct screaming at him to stay inside. Alex grabbed his coat and rushed out the door. The cold rain soaked through his clothes as he approached her. Each step felt heavier, as if the air around her carried an unseen force. When he was only a few feet away, she finally spoke. "It's been a long time, Alex." Her voice was exactly as he remembered, soft, melodic, and strangely calming. But now, there was a gravity to it, as if the words carried a weight he couldn't understand. "You," he struggled to find the right words. "You're real." She smiled faintly, the corner of her lips curling in that same serene way. "Did you ever doubt it?" Alex shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. "Why are you here? What's going on?" I thought I'd never see you again." Her expression darkened, and for the first time, Alex noticed something different about her. She looked tired, as if she were carrying a burden too heavy for her slender frame. "I came to warn you," she said quietly. "They're coming." "Who's coming?" Alex asked, his voice rising with alarm. "My people," she replied, her eyes glinting with a mix of fear and determination. "They'd found your world, Alex, and they won't come in peace." The rain seemed to grow colder as her words sank in. Alex stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "Why? What do they want?" She hesitated, as if weighing how much to tell them. "Resources, control, experimentation. To them, your kind is inferior." Alex felt a surge of anger. "And what about you? Are you one of them?" "I was," she admitted, her gaze softening. "But everything changed that night we met. You did something no one else had ever done. You showed me kindness. You gave me something simple, yet precious, a moment of connection. That's why you're here now." Alex asked, his voice laced with skepticism. Because of a candy. It wasn't just the candy, she said, stepping closer. It was what it represented. Your kind has something my people don't understand. Empathy, compassion, the ability to see value in things beyond logic or conquest. That's why I came back. To help you. Help us. Against an alien invasion. Alex scoffed, half laughing despite the tension. How am I supposed to believe you? She reached out and touched his arm, and immediately a rush of images flooded his mind. Vast, shimmering starships, towering alien figures, and a planet bathed in light, both beautiful and terrifying. It wasn't just a vision. It was as if he could feel the overwhelming power of her people. When the images faded, Alex stumbled back, his breathing uneven. What was that? A glimpse of what's coming, she said softly. You don't have to trust me, Alex, but you have to prepare. Alex's mind raced. Why me? I'm just a normal guy. I don't know how to fight aliens or stop an invasion. She stepped back, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. You're not as ordinary as you think, Alex. You're the one who changed me. And now you may be the only one who can change the fate of your world. Before he could respond, the sound of a distant rumble filled the air, like thunder rolling across the sky. She turned her head sharply, her expression hardening. They found me. I have to go. What? No. Wait. Alex reached out, but she was already fading, her form dissolving into shimmering particles of light. Her final words hung in the air like a ghost. This is only the beginning. Alex stood in the rain, his heart pounding. The quiet life he had known was gone. And somehow he knew he was about to be dragged into something far bigger than he could ever imagine. Humanity's hidden strength. The air in Alex's apartment felt heavy, as if the atmosphere itself was bracing for something monumental. He sat at his desk, staring blankly at his tablet. The cryptic messages, the alien beauty's sudden appearance, her warning of an invasion. It all felt surreal. Yet the vivid images she had shown him refused to fade from his mind. Starships, conquest, despair. But why him? What could he possibly do? Before he could spiral further into doubt, a sharp knock at his door startled him. Alex froze. He wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. Another knock followed, more urgent this time. Slowly, he stood and approached the door, his heart pounding. Peeking through the peephole, he saw nothing, just the dimly lit hallway outside. Alex, a voice called from the other side, soft yet firm. It was her. He swung the door open, half expecting her to vanish again, but there she stood, her silver hair damp from the rain and her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. You shouldn't be here, Alex said, his voice a mix of frustration and confusion. Didn't you say they're after you? They are, Alanera replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. But there's no time to hide. We have to act. Alex shut the door behind her, his mind racing. Act? Act how? You keep saying I'm important, but you haven't told me why. She turned to face him, her expression serious. Because you, like all humans, possess something my kind doesn't, an ability to resist control. Alex frowned. Control? What are you talking about? She gestured for him to sit, and for the first time, Alex noticed a strange device in her hand. It was small and sleek, glowing faintly with alien symbols. As he sat down, she placed it on the table between them. My species, Alanera began, her voice steady, operates as a hive mind. We are connected, every thought shared, every action coordinated. It makes us efficient, but also vulnerable. There is no individuality, no resistance. But you, humans, you are different. Your minds are chaotic. Chaotic, Alex echoed, raising an eyebrow. She nodded. Unpredictable. You think in ways we cannot. That's why your kind has survived and thrived, despite being technologically inferior to others in the galaxy. It's also why the Hive fears you. The Hive. Alex leaned forward. You mean your people? Alanera hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. Not all of us. The Hive is the collective consciousness that governs my species. It controls everything. Our thoughts, our actions, even our emotions. But when I met you, something happened. Your kindness broke through that control, if only for a moment. It awakened individuality in me. Alex stared at her, struggling to process what she was saying. So what? You're free now. Not entirely, she admitted, her golden eyes darkening. The Hive still calls to me, but your actions planted a seed, a fragment of resistance. That's why I'm here. If we can find a way to replicate that resistance, we might have a chance to stop the invasion. Alex leaned back, his mind reeling. You want me to teach your people how to be human? Alanera smiled faintly. In a way, yes. But first, we need to understand how your minds work. This device, she gestured to the glowing object on the table, will help me study your neural patterns. Study. Alex narrowed his eyes. That sounds a lot like experimentation. Only a simulation, she assured him. It won't harm you. But I need your trust, Alex. Without it, Earth will fall. He looked at the device, then back at her. Part of him wanted to throw her out, to pretend this was all some elaborate dream. But another part, a deeper, instinctual part, knew she was telling the truth. The images she had shown him were too vivid, too real to ignore. Fine, he said after a long pause. But if I feel anything weird, I'm pulling the plug. Alanera nodded, relief flickering across her face. Thank you. She picked up the device and pressed a series of symbols on its surface. A soft hum filled the room as the device emitted a gentle blue light. Place your hand here, she instructed, pointing to a glowing panel. Alex hesitated, then did as she asked. The moment his palm touched the device, a wave of warmth spread through his body. His vision blurred, and suddenly, he wasn't in his apartment anymore. He stood in a vast, empty void, surrounded by shimmering lights that danced like fireflies. Alanera appeared beside him, her form glowing faintly. This is a simulation of your mind, she explained. Your thoughts, memories, and emotions, all laid bare. Alex turned slowly, his gaze drawn to a cluster of lights pulsing erratically. What's that? Your core impulses, Alanera said, her tone almost reverent. Hope, fear, curiosity. These are the elements that make humans unique. They are chaotic, yet powerful. As she spoke, the lights began to shift, forming images, memories of Alex's life. The park where they first met, the candy he had shared with her. Moments of joy, pain, and triumph flickered before them like fragments of a movie. You see, Alanera said, her voice soft, your individuality is your greatest strength. The Hive cannot replicate this. It is your chaos that makes you unbreakable. Alex stared at the swirling lights, his chest tightening. For the first time, he understood what she meant. Humanity's greatest weakness, its unpredictability, was also its greatest weapon. But as he watched, a shadow began creeping into the void, dark tendrils snaking toward the lights. Alanera's expression shifted to one of alarm. No, she whispered. They found us. Before Alex could react, the void began to collapse, and the last thing he heard was Alanera's voice, urgent and fearful. Wake up, Alex. Wake up. Secrets of the past. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the alien device lying on the table. Alex sat on the edge of his chair, his hands clasped tightly together. Across from him, Alanera's golden eyes seemed distant, as if she were looking through him rather than at him. Her usually calm demeanor was replaced by something that unnerved him. Hesitation. You're hiding something, Alex said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but his mind was racing. All this talk about the hive, about saving humanity. There's more to it, isn't there? Alanera didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for the alien device and turned it over in her hands, the soft glow of its symbols reflecting off her iridescent skin. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Do you remember the candy?" Alex blinked, caught off guard. The candy. What does that have to do with anything? It wasn't just a moment of kindness, she said, her gaze locking onto his. It was a catalyst. A catalyst for what? Alex leaned forward, his unease growing. She hesitated again, as if the next words would change everything. For me. For what I've become. Alex frowned. I don't understand. Alanera stood and began to pace, her movements graceful yet restless. My people are not like yours. We are born into the hive, and from the moment we exist, we are connected to the collective consciousness. There is no individuality, no choice. Every thought, every action is dictated by the hive's will. She stopped and turned to face him. But when you gave me that candy, something happened. Its chemical composition. It interacted with my physiology in a way that shouldn't have been possible. It severed my connection to the hive. For the first time in my existence, I could think for myself. Alex stared at her, struggling to process what she was saying. Are you telling me that a piece of candy broke your mind control? It's more complicated than that, she replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The candy was just a trigger. The true change came from you, your act of kindness, your willingness to share something so simple, so human. It introduced an element my people can't comprehend. Connection without control. Alex ran a hand through his hair, his thoughts spinning. So, what on some kind of alien antidote? In a way, yes, Alanera said, her tone softening. Your species possesses a unique neural chemistry, one that is resistant to the hive's influence. That's why they fear you. That's why they want to conquer your world, not just for resources, but to ensure humanity never becomes a threat. Alex leaned back in his chair, the weight of her words sinking in. And you? What do you want from me? She stepped closer, her golden eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before, vulnerability. I want to stop them, Alex, but I can't do it alone. The hive is already preparing for war, and they will overwhelm your planet if we don't act. You have the potential to disrupt their control, just as you did with me. How? Alex asked, his voice laced with doubt. I'm just one person. What can I possibly do against an entire alien species? You're not just one person, she said firmly. You're a symbol of what humanity represents: resilience, unpredictability, and the power of connection. If we can replicate the effect you had on me, we could sever others from the hive. We could give them freedom. Alex was about to respond when a sudden, sharp noise cut through the room. It was a high-pitched, mechanical whine that sent shivers down his spine. Alanera's expression shifted to one of alarm. They've found us, she said, her voice tense. What? Alex stood, his eyes darting to the windows. Who's found us? The hive's scouts, she replied, grabbing the alien device and slipping it into a pocket of her flowing cloak. They'd been tracking me since I defected. They must have picked up on the signal from the device. Before Alex could ask what that meant, the room was bathed in a pulsating blue light. A loud hum filled the air, and the walls began to vibrate. Alanera grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. We have to go. Now. Go where? Alex shouted over the noise. Somewhere they can't follow, she said, pulling him toward the door. But before they could reach it, the blue light intensified, and a crackling energy field materialized in the center of the room. From within the field, a figure emerged, a towering insectoid being with metallic armor and piercing, glowing eyes. It clicked and whirred in a language Alex couldn't understand, but the menace in its stance was universal. Alanera stepped in front of Alex, her posture defensive. Stay behind me, she said, her voice steady. The creature raised an appendage, a weapon forming at its tip. Alex's heart pounded as he tried to process what was happening. This wasn't just a warning anymore. The invasion had already begun. "Alex," Alanera said, her tone urgent. "You have to trust me." He nodded, swallowing his fear. "What do we do?" She glanced back at him, a flicker of determination in her golden eyes. "We fight." The betrayal. The flickering firelight cast shadows across the cold, cavernous room. Alex leaned against the jagged wall, his breaths shallow and quick. His heart was still racing from the chase. The Hive Scout had been relentless, and if it weren't for Alanera's quick thinking and her strange device that cloaked their escape, he wouldn't be alive. But now, as the silence closed in, a new fear crept over him, one he couldn't quite place. Alanera stood on the opposite side of the room, staring into the fire. Her silver hair glinted in the dim light, and her expression was unreadable. For someone who had just saved his life, she looked distant, almost calculating. "How long are we safe here?" Alex asked, his voice breaking the stillness. "Not long," she replied without turning. "The Hive is relentless. They'll track us again soon." Her tone was calm, almost too calm. Alex shifted uncomfortably. Something about her felt off. "Why do they want you so badly?" Alex pressed, folding his arms. "You said you broke free of their control, but there's more to it, isn't there?" She turned to face him, her golden eyes glowing faintly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Alex said, stepping closer, "you're not telling me everything. I've been running, risking my life, trusting you. But I'm starting to think there's more to this than you're letting on." For a moment, the only sound was the crackling of the fire. Then Alanera sighed, her shoulders sagging as if carrying an invisible weight. "You're right. There is more." Alex tensed. "Start talking." She hesitated, then met his gaze. "When I left the Hive, I didn't just escape. I took something with me, something they desperately want back." "What?" Alex's voice was sharp now. "What did you take?" "A fragment of the Hive itself," she said, her tone grave. "A piece of their collective consciousness." Alex's mind reeled. "You stole their mind? Why?" "To use it against them," Alanera explained. "With this fragment, I can disrupt their control, free others like me, and weaken their hold on the galaxy. But it's also a beacon. As long as I have it, they will stop at nothing to find me." Alex's hands clenched into fists. "And you didn't think to tell me this before dragging me into all of this." "I didn't have a choice," she said, her voice rising. "You're the only one who can help me, the only one who can survive contact with the fragment without being consumed." "Why me?" Alex demanded. "What makes me so special?" "Because you're human," she replied, stepping closer. "Your mind is unique, chaotic, resilient. Unlike my people, you can resist the Hive's influence. That's why they fear your kind. That's why they want to eliminate you." Alex took a step back, his jaw tightening. "So this whole thing, the warnings, the escape, everything, it was all just to use me." Alanera's eyes softened, and for a moment, she looked almost regretful. "At first, yes, but it's not like that anymore. I need you, Alex, but not just because of the fragment. I need you because you're the only person I trust." "Trust?" Alex laughed bitterly. "How am I supposed to trust you when you've been lying to me from the start?" Before she could respond, the room trembled and a low mechanical hum filled the air. The fire flickered, its light dimming. Alex's heart sank as he realized what was happening. "They found us," Alanera said, her voice tight with fear. The walls shimmered, and a holographic figure materialized in the center of the room. It was humanoid in shape, but with sharp, angular features and glowing blue eyes. Its voice was cold and precise. "Alanera," it said, addressing her directly, "you have betrayed the Hive. Surrender the fragment, and your punishment will be swift." Alex glanced at Alanara, expecting her to deny the accusation, but she stood silently, her expression unreadable. The hologram turned its gaze to Alex. "And you, human, you have no place in this conflict. Leave now, and you may live." Alex hesitated, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to run, to leave this mess behind. But another part, the part that couldn't shake the memory of Alanara saving his life, the part that remembered the fear in her eyes, refused to abandon her. "No," he said firmly. "I'm staying." The hologram's eyes narrowed. "So be it." The ground shook violently as the hologram vanished. A loud, mechanical roar echoed through the cavern, and Alex knew they were out of time. "What now?" he asked, turning to Alanara. She met his gaze, a flicker of determination in her golden eyes. "Now, we fight." But as she prepared the alien device in her hand, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more she wasn't telling him. The weight of her secrets hung between them like a storm cloud, threatening to break. And deep down, he wondered, could he truly trust her, or was this just the prelude to an even greater betrayal? The final countdown. The room erupted in chaos. Alex barely had time to react as the cavern walls began to crack, glowing fissures spreading like veins. The Hive's forces were closing in, and their method was clear. No subtlety, just overwhelming power. Alanara's voice cut through the noise, sharp and commanding. "We have to move. The escape route is this way." Alex hesitated, glancing at her. The weight of her earlier confession still lingered in his mind. She'd lied, manipulated him, and used him as a pawn in her plans. But now wasn't the time for second-guessing. The walls were trembling, and he could hear the ominous metallic clicks of Hive scouts approaching. "Fine," he muttered, following her through a narrow passageway. The air grew colder as they ran, the flickering light from Alanara's alien device guiding their way. "What's the plan?" Alex asked, his voice strained. "We can't just keep running forever." "We're not running forever," she replied without looking back. "We're heading to the core of the Hive's relay system. If I can implant the fragment into their network, it will disrupt their control long enough for your people to mobilize." "And you're sure this will work?" Alex pressed, dodging a falling chunk of debris. "No," she admitted, her tone clipped. "But it's our only chance." The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. At its center stood a towering obelisk of shimmering black metal, its surface etched with pulsating veins of blue light. Alex felt a chill run down his spine as he looked at it. The obelisk seemed alive, its hum resonating deep in his chest. "This is it," Alanara said, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "The Hive relay." Before Alex could respond, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. He turned to see a squad of Hive enforcers entering the room, their insectoid forms gleaming under the light of the obelisk. Their movements were unnervingly synchronized, like extensions of a single mind. "Stall them," Alanara said, her voice urgent. She ran toward the obelisk, the alien device in her hand glowing brighter. "Stall them," Alex shouted. "With what?" "Be unpredictable," she yelled over her shoulder. "It's your greatest strength." Alex groaned, his heart pounding as the Hive enforcers advanced. His eyes darted around the chamber, searching for anything he could use. A loose pipe, a pile of rocks, his own 2 fists. None of it seemed sufficient against the towering figures bearing down on him. But then he remembered what Alanara had said about the Hive, how their strength came from unity, but their weakness was their inability to adapt. They couldn't think like humans. They couldn't anticipate chaos. Taking a deep breath, Alex grabbed a handful of loose rocks and hurled them at the nearest enforcer. The creature paused, its glowing eyes flickering as it processed the unexpected attack. Seizing the moment, Alex sprinted to the side, weaving erratically to keep them off balance. "Come on, you oversized tin cans," he yelled, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Catch me if you can." The Hive enforcers shifted their attention to him, their movements jerky and disjointed as they tried to recalibrate. Alex ducked and dodged, using every ounce of his energy to stay one step ahead. He didn't have a weapon, but he had something they couldn't replicate: instinct and improvisation. Meanwhile, Alanera reached the obelisk. She placed the device against its surface, her hands trembling as she activated it. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, and the obelisk began to pulse with erratic light. "Almost there," she called out, glancing at Alex. "Take your time." He shouted back sarcastically, narrowly avoiding a swipe from one of the enforcers. The obelisk's hum grew louder, and the chamber shook violently. The hive enforcers froze mid-step, their movements halting as if they'd been disconnected from an invisible signal. Alex stumbled, catching himself on a nearby wall. "What's happening?" he asked, panting. "The fragment is destabilizing their network," Alanera said, her voice filled with both relief and urgency. "But it's temporary. We need to get out of here before the relay overloads." As she turned to join him, the ground beneath the obelisk split open, and a massive figure emerged. It was larger than the enforcers, its form more refined and menacing. Its glowing eyes locked onto Alanera, and its voice resonated through the chamber. "You dare defy the hive," it intoned, its tone dripping with malice. "You think one fragment can undo millennia of perfection." Alanera stood her ground, her golden eyes blazing with determination. "Perfection. Your so-called unity is a prison. I've tasted freedom, and I'll never go back." The hive overlord raised an appendage, energy crackling at its tip. Alex felt his stomach drop. "Alanera, move," he shouted. But she didn't. Instead, she looked back at Alex, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "Get out of here, Alex. This is my fight." "No way," he yelled, running toward her despite every instinct telling him to flee. "We're in this together." The overlord unleashed a blast of energy, and Alex dove, grabbing Alanera and pulling her out of its path. The blast struck the obelisk, and the entire chamber shuddered as the relay began to collapse. "We have to go," Alex shouted, dragging her to her feet. Together, they sprinted toward the exit, the chamber crumbling around them. Behind them, the hive overlord's roars echoed, growing fainter as the relay imploded. They barely made it out, collapsing onto the ground as the tunnel entrance sealed behind them. For a moment, neither of them spoke, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. "You didn't have to do that," Alanera said finally, her voice soft. "Yeah, well," Alex replied, managing a weak smile. "Call it another human weakness." She looked at him, her golden eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before: hope. Maybe it's not a weakness after all. Above them, the night sky was alive with streaks of light. The hive's ships were retreating, their network shattered. But Alex knew this wasn't the end. It was just the first victory in a much larger war. Humanity's triumph. The dawn broke over a scared Earth, painting the horizon in hues of gold and crimson. Smoke from the alien conflict still lingered in the atmosphere, curling upward like ghostly fingers. Alex stood on a makeshift platform at the edge of the battlefield, his eyes scanning the remnants of the hive's forces. Their massive ships, once symbols of indomitable power, now lay shattered across the landscape, their sleek black surfaces scorched and broken. But victory wasn't the feeling in the air. Not yet. Behind him, a crowd of survivors and soldiers watched in tense silence as Alanera prepared the alien device, the fragment she had stolen. The key to disrupting the hive's control pulsed faintly in her hands. Its glow seemed weaker now, as if it had spent much of its energy in their escape. "This is the last chance," Alanera said, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked at Alex, her golden eyes filled with both determination and fear. "If this doesn't work, the hive will regroup. They'll adapt. And next time, they won't hesitate to annihilate everything." Alex swallowed hard, his throat dry. "And if it does work?" Her gaze turned to the skies, where the remaining hive ships hovered, motionless. Then we give them a choice: freedom or collapse. The crowd murmured, uneasy. They didn't fully understand what was happening, but they trusted Alex, even if he didn't trust himself. "What do you need me to do?" Alex asked. Alanera handed him the device, her fingers brushing his. "Hold this. It will amplify your neural patterns, your chaos, your humanity, and broadcast it to the hive's network. And that will break their control," he asked, glancing nervously at the pulsating fragment. "It will create a moment of clarity," she explained. "A moment where every being in the hive can choose whether to stay connected or to sever themselves." Alex stared at the device, its glow now reflecting in his eyes. What if they don't choose freedom? Then the hive will remain whole, Alanera said grimly, and Earth won't survive their return. The weight of her words hung in the air, pressing down on Alex like a physical force. He looked at the faces in the crowd, frightened, hopeful, desperate. They were counting on him, even if they didn't fully understand why. Taking a deep breath, Alex stepped forward and placed the device on the platform. The fragment's glow intensified, its pulsations syncing with the rhythm of his heartbeat. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Alanera stood beside him, her voice calm but firm. "Clear your mind, Alex. Focus on who you are. What makes you human?" Alex closed his eyes, letting the chaos of his thoughts swirl freely. Memories flashed before him. His lonely childhood, the moment he shared candy with Alanera, the terror of the hive's attack, and the unrelenting hope that had kept him moving forward. He thought of the billions of lives at stake, of the fragile beauty of his planet, of the people he loved. The hum grew into a roar, and the fragment flared with brilliant light. Suddenly, Alex felt as though he was being pulled into a vast, endless void. He was no longer standing on the platform, but floating in a sea of infinite consciousness. Voices whispered around him, thousands, maybe millions, all speaking at once. "What is this? I can't think. Who am I?" The hive. He could feel them, countless minds tethered together in a single, suffocating network. Their thoughts were rigid, mechanical, devoid of individuality. But now, cracks were forming in the structure, like ice breaking under pressure. Alex reached out, not with his hands, but with his mind. "You don't have to be part of this," he thought, projecting the words into the void. "You can be free. You can choose." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Some voices recoiled, clinging desperately to the safety of the collective. Others hesitated, confused and afraid. But a growing number began to shift, their whispers turning into something new: hope, curiosity, and a yearning for something more. Freedom. What does it mean to choose? I want to see, to feel. The void began to ripple, and Alex felt the hive's grip weakening. The voices that chose freedom broke away, their presence fading like stars winking out. Those who remained grew quieter, their power diminished. Back on the platform, Alanera watched as the hive ships in the sky began to falter. One by one, they powered down, their once synchronized movements turning erratic. Some ships began to retreat, while others drifted aimlessly, their pilots no longer under the hive's control. Alex gasped, his eyes snapping open. The fragment's glow had dimmed to nothing, and the device lay silent. Around him, the crowd erupted in cheers and cries of relief. The hive's hold was broken. Alanera placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression unreadable. "You did it." "No," Alex said, his voice hoarse. "We did it." She smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. Not all of them chose freedom. The hive still exists, weaker now, but not gone. Alex nodded, his gaze shifting to the horizon. "Then we'll be ready." The crowd began to disperse, their spirits lifted by the unexpected victory. But Alex and Alanera remained on the platform, watching as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the lingering smoke. "What happens now?" Alex asked. Alinera looked at him, her golden eyes filled with quiet determination. "Now we rebuild. Together." As the sun rose higher, illuminating the shattered earth, Alex felt a spark of hope ignite within him. Humanity had survived the impossible, not through strength or technology, but through the very thing the hive could never understand: connection. And as long as they had that, Alex knew, they would never truly be defeated.